Hey everybody, I'm Mandi with Ecstatic Astrology, and this is the February forecast. And I'm here with Christa of Practical Astros. Hi, Christa.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. We're
Yeah.
recording this January 15th, so in the middle of the month, and there's still some things to go.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Yeah. I'm good. It was kind of fun to I've been writing about February. For some reason I'm kind of like ahead of the game as far as my forecasting goes. And so it was nice to feel maybe that's just Capricorn season. It's like all the holiday stuff is over. And so there's not these external obligations that are demanding our attention. And so we're able to just kind of like TCB and like get ahead of some things. So it was nice to look ahead at February because there's like lots of interesting shifts that are really starting to happen. This month, January 2025, feels like 2024 vibes. And so moving into February, it's like we're starting to define the identity of the year a little bit more firmly. And so I'm looking forward to just talking about it with you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as far as the game shoots and ladders go, I
Mm.
feel like we are January is kind of still climbing the ladder, and then February we start to look at the slide
Yeah.
and the slide into eclipses,
Yep.
the slide into newness because it will be brand new.
That
Yeah,
would
so
be like a fabulous astrology calendar for a year to see like how like the okay, well, if they meet at this point at 9 degrees Aries, like the new moon's going to be there, but also like the Venus and Mercury retrogrades are going to start there. How are they going to slide to each other to like superimpose like snakes and ladders over the astrological transits? I think that you were onto something, and now you have a new rabbit hole to get lost in.
maybe games, new stuff coming in
Yeah, yeah,
2026 probably. We'll see.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the North Node is in my fifth house, so maybe it's on me to create a new game.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's in the ninth. So, and that's something I like to talk about when we do these videos is to pay attention to your own chart and what your rising sign is. And we'll say signs, but if you have, for instance, Gemini in the 12th house or Gemini in the ninth house, it will have a little bit different flair according to your personal life. So
Yeah.
just look at your chart. It's really easy to Google. It's not hard.
Yep.
There are things that will help. So
Yeah.
that's how to life hack this, I think, is to
Yeah.
know where, what theme, and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
I guess we should look at the beginning of the month.
Sure. And I will throw in a pitch. I've been doing this other series of no dumb questions, and I had one that's like when I was telling other people I was making it, they were like, "Really?" But I made a no dumb questions of like how to cast a chart because if you don't know astrology, you don't know how to do it. You don't know what websites to go to. You don't know that there's free resources available. So if you don't know how to cast your own chart, you can go to AstroSeek. You can go to this YouTube channel. I have a how to cast an astrology chart. It's so easy. And then once you start to get familiar with casting them, you can, then become more familiar with reading your own chart. So you kind of understand, if you're a certain rising, where is your sun in that chart? And then like, where are the nodes, landing in those houses? So it might seem incredibly elementary for most people who watch this channel, but for some people, like we all start somewhere, we're not born knowing how to cast astrology charts. So
Hmm.
I'm thankful that you're watching this video and you're looking at the weather ahead, but to be able to put it within the context of your own life, understanding your own nativity and where these transits are happening and then what those house topics are is really key to then like utilizing it. So it's not just a matter of like memorizing things, but plugging them into your own story, like a Mad Lib of like, this is the house topic, these are the characters, and this is where it's going to play out for you as the individual.
I completely agree. Um, quick pause. I got to record. I didn't
Oh
hit
yeah.
record. Okay, now we can edit that part out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Or we can just go forward. That's what it is. It's about going forward this month.
And having backups because I mean, I think about the overview of the month and when I first of all, I want to say to your point that I like to look at the signs as like an adjective and
Mm-hmm.
the houses as the where,
Yeah.
and the planets are the what, So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at it that way, then you can understand whenever things happen in Pisces what Pisces is, and then but where is that for you?
Yeah.
Pisces is magical and dreamy and delusional, sometimes illusion. There's lots of different adjectives you can use for Pisces, but where are you experiencing that? So when it comes to, it's funny because I forgot to hit record, and I thought, well, we need a backup just in case, because once Mercury and Venus is already in Pisces when we start
Mm-hmm.
the month, and it actually moves into Aries pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Mercury will move into Pisces, and those are the signs that it will go retrograde in later on.
Yeah.
So once you see that happen this month, I think that's kind of a thing to keep in mind, is that, there's no retrogrades happening in the month of February, other than Mars, which is currently retrograde. But with Mercury and Venus retrograde coming up, you want to look at it on the way to the retrograde too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to think about maybe, oh, I need a backup. Oh, I need this, I need that. It's a good, another good way to kind of use this forecast. So
Yeah, and just before the month starts on the 31st, Uranus goes direct. So it's like it like kind of pioneers that direct motion, because we've got Jupiter going direct and then Mars going direct at the end of the month. Venus goes retrograde, I think, on the 1st of March. So
yeah,
it's like these bookends of retrogradation. But I do like Uranus kind of, being ahead of the game and like putting that forward motion in Venus's temple. Seems like Venus really does play a big role just overall for February. And
it
yeah,
does.
yeah. But one thing that you mentioned before we started recording is that how there are no oppositions, like major oppositions this month. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as oppositions go, on one hand, it's like a mirror to me because it is two
Mm-hmm.
sides to a coin. And on the other hand, sometimes it feels like a tug of war, depending on, what you're talking about. But I think the fact that there are no oppositions really speaks to the fact that everything is concentrated in a certain area. And to focus on a certain area of a chart or life in general is to it's going to be loud in that specific place. And the last
Mm-hmm.
time that I really tuned into that would have been December 2019 going into January of 2020. And there was a huge buildup of stuff in Capricorn. And in fact, maybe we should just look at the chart for that, because I think that might be a good place to start.
The
I want
word that like popped into my mind, and I was like, I feel like I know what it means, but the word that comes up is amalgamation. And it's
yes.
the action process, a result of combining or uniting. It feels like this is an amalgamation, not just a pileup or a concentration, but like things really being stuck onto each other and then fusing. Because when planets are co-present in a sign, even if they're like Pluto's at 1 degree and the sun's at 29, they're still blending their significations and they amalgamate together to create this new alchemical, you know, thing that happens in a certain house for you, in the zeitgeist, in our collective experience. So yeah, let's look at this really wonderful 2020 chart.
Yeah, and I want to say I have a screenshot of an article, and it's like California records first instances of new virus. And I took a screenshot of it thinking about it because I had done the first ever year ahead forecast I did was December of 2019. And I was really, it might have been November, but I was really trying to explain to people the what it meant. And I mean, I wasn't a baby astrologer, but I was new to giving these classes, these
Mm-hmm.
forecasts. And it was really hard, but I think I did get it through to people that things are about to really change a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the difference here is, I mean, I've just got January 11th, and I want to say that's pretty close to when that announcement came through. And you see everything here. I mean, I guess the outlier would have been Uranus and the nodes, and even now the nodes are, kind of in. I mean, I guess the node was there too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the outlier was Uranus in that situation in Taurus, and we still have that going on right
Yeah.
this moment. That will change also. But that buildup means something. And of course, that happened with the South Node. So if you kind of
Mm.
look at this and you go, wow, look at all of that energy, there's really nothing to speak of. I have some asteroids in here, the moon, which goes around anyway, and Uranus, but
Yeah.
nothing else. And if you come to now and like, let's just go to February of, actually, let me just do this. I know I can do year to get there very quickly and then go to Venus ingressing Aries to get to February. Okay, so if you look at February 1st, and of course it's in a different area, we have Mars in Cancer, but as we get closer to March,
Mm.
I think Mars and Uranus and Jupiter being the outliers do change a little bit, but there's no opposition still. There's still no
Yeah.
oppositions. But I mean, all of this Pisces really is what stands out to me. And as we start February, Venus and Neptune conjoin. That's the very first thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But with the North Node, and to me, that's what's different this time is the
Instead of
North
South.
Node
Yeah.
instead of the
Yeah.
South Node. And the North Node takes on this archetype of um, insatiability. Is that the right
Mm-hmm.
word? I don't even know if that's a real word, but being insatiable
Yeah.
and wanting to develop that area, going towards that area, the head of the dragon. Whereas the South Node was getting rid of, we're
Mm-hmm.
separating from, and that was in Capricorn. And now we have, and we separated from lots of structures around that
Mm-hmm.
time. Our foundations completely kind of broke down, um, and karmic dust getting kicked up around governmental things. And now we have the North Node, which is more
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, the world you can dream is there waiting for you. Um, I think that's kind of the overall feeling I get, but also the way you go towards the North Node can be a little dangerous in Vedic astrology. It's not a great thing, the North Node. In Western
Yeah.
astrology, it's not necessarily bad, I don't think, but um, Pisces being delusion and confusion, there is, I think, a lot of that going on, and I think we've talked about that pretty much every month
Mm.
since we started doing is the delusion, the misinformation, the disinformation, what's real, AI, all of this stuff happening with regards to not knowing what's real almost, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that will keep ramping up. I mean, the picture of the beginning of February is not terribly different from where we are right this moment in January. All of this, it was kind of slow. Venus is going to go retrograde. Venus is moving very slow in Pisces. Saturn is direct in Pisces. And the last time Saturn was in Pisces was lots of domestic terrorism in the
Mm-hmm.
90s. So looking at February and the buildup of Pisces here, just beginning February with Venus Neptune conjunction to me is kind of a cue to stay grounded if you can, and to look very deeply into maybe your own beliefs, maybe your own where your intuition is leading you. I mean, it's never bad to listen to intuition unless it's a delusion, so
Right, but how to spot the difference. And
exactly.
if we're talking about like the lack of the best thing about that Saturnian aspect of the opposition is that it creates tension. And if you have something in your life that creates tension, it's usually it's you and another person, and like there's tension there, and like where does that collapse? Does it collapse in communication, or does it collapse in whatever shared project, or does it collapse with another person getting involved? Like where does that collapse happen? That's like the space to go in and be able to work on the healing aspect of this. And I look at, okay, well, if nothing's in opposition, the nodes always are, because they're just points. They're points of a pathway, and they are always in tandem to each other. They show these points that we turn. And the myth of Rahu, of that, that dragon whose head was cut off as it had the elixir of immortality in its mouth, but because the head was separated from the body, it can't absorb and like actually become immortal. It can't integrate that, but it has that desire to. And so that drive feels like what the North Node is the drive to seek something new, the drive to go to something that maybe is unknown and then possibly dangerous. The drive itself can be an obsession, and you can get deluded in the obsession of that drive. I like having the node in Pisces simply for the shift of attention outside of the Aries house. North Node in Aries, just like that sentence alone kind of like makes me a little shook just thinking about it. Not that it's inherently bad, but it's like Aries is a lot. The North Node is a lot. Like the two of them together is a lot, a lot, a lot. And having it in that receptive sign of Jupiter as opposed to the action-oriented sign of Mars, it feels a little coded to say these words, but like I hope, which is that hope feels like a Jupiterian word. I hope that there's the tension that maybe the North Node brings with the South Node is, as we all experience history living today, there's lots of tragedy happening all the time, and as a person who went through, a geological event in North Carolina and who is witnessing the forest fires in California, there's so much just seemingly meaningless tragedy that happens. Like, why do these children witness, the deaths of their families? Why do these people who just moved into their home 3 weeks later have it completely destroyed? Like, why are all these curated homes of art and animals, and like, why is there just like this senseless death? Like, it's really traumatizing to just witness and experience it and ache and hold that emotion for other people, regardless if you're actually one of those other people. An antidote to that, because that is such an extreme human experience, an antidote to that is to hope that there's a compassionate resolution and silver lining to it. And that silver lining, that hope for a silver lining feels like North Node, Venus, Neptune in Pisces with the moon there too, of like, maybe this is like what we can collectively work together to begin to heal these traumas that we experience individually and, as neighborhoods and as territories and as countries and as genders and as faiths and all these things. Like, we have so much that we're being pulled in one kind of violent direction, and an antidote to that is to like try to understand, integrate, keep it from happening again, and just dream and hope about ways that counterbalance that. And so maybe the fact there is no opposition here, the oppositional tension comes with the nodes, and I'm glad that it's in Pisces, in this situation than really in any other sign.
Yeah. And, you bring up the North Node, and I like to say Pisces. I always have said since I've learned about astrology and what Pisces is that it's very related to, and I think it's a Christian concept, but I'm sure it's a concept in every, religion, which is agape love, which is love without rules, without boundaries, without judgments. It is the purest kind of love that you can have. The love that, I think people who believe in God or whatever you believe in believe that has for you,
Yeah.
So I agree with you. And I think that there's an opportunity, and especially this moment when we start February, because it's a Venus Neptune conjunction, but it's also a Venus Neptune North Node conjunction because they move together. That same day, I think Neptune moves to the 28th degree. Let me see.
Yeah, I think it's like 5 hours later. That might be
there it is. Wait, close. And the moon was there. There it is. 28, 28, 28. That's
yeah, it's 5 hour difference between one conjunction and the next.
Yes. And I think that's beautiful. And I think it's necessary because further on down the road, maybe not very long, actually, it's going to be sometime in March and April, Neptune and Saturn both move into Aries. And so this is a time I think that our attention is drawn to. I'm watching what's happening with TikTok being shut down and all these people joining Red Note, which is this, I guess, Chinese app that's a lot like TikTok or Instagram or something like that. And I saw a video of a woman being very emotional that she could talk to someone in China, and that, it was translated and she could understand it. And she was so emotional about it. And especially with all of the talk you have about, nationalism and enemies and things like that between countries, it's really kind of nice to see the human interaction with that. And that's really a Pisces topic. It's no boundaries. Pisces has
Mm-hmm.
zero. Saturn's in Pisces. Those boundaries get redrawn. And so I think that is a good example of how we kick off February. And it makes a lot of sense with, especially regards to social media changing and being able to look at other countries and going, are we really enemies? But our governments are,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just I think a good time to dive into that subject of, what judgments, boundaries, what makes us different, what doesn't make us different, where
Yeah.
can we find the love in everything before Neptune and Saturn move into Aries. So
But if we
uh
can find like the reason why and the reminder of connection when they go into that fiery sign, they're like fully informed with the best information. I watched this, it was BBC One documentary about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and it was like a 4-part series, and basically it was going back and forth between, the royalists and the Irish, and the how that conflict built over time and how it changed and how it just got usurped by like more and more violent powers on both sides, and the victims, both, of the loyalists and of the Irish, and just like how like the experience shared of people on the ground, like they were their each other's neighbors, and it was like this really tragic story, but it was a reminder of, you may disagree with your neighbors and you might have these superimposed boundaries around, what country you even belong to, but beyond that, like those boundaries don't actually exist. And Pisces is a great example of teaching us the benefit of boundarylessness, or the reminder that boundaries are often put upon us without any real reason. We just agree that they're there. Saturn's in Pisces. Saturn is about the limit, and can be about that boundary. And maybe the dissolution of boundaries is a really positive reminder of Saturn and Pisces, of like just realizing, that maybe all boundaries aren't actually, like, we just agree that they're there. It's like the emperor has no clothes, until one little kid says, like, I think that dude's naked. And like everyone was like, oh, you're right. But we all just
put on
agreed
some
that he
clothes.
was, we just agreed that he was beautifully clothed in the most like finest, gold silk that could ever be spun. But I just am too stupid to see that he's naked. And it was like the innocence of a child to be like, nah, that guy's naked walking down the street, like God bless Saturn and Pisces just for that aspect alone.
Yeah. And this specific moment, I think just a few hours before that, or maybe the day before that, maybe two. So at the end of January, the sun's trining Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like it's got quite a nice kickoff to February. I think the caveat is when the moon does move into Aries, because then we get Mars being
Mm.
a thing to look at. And
No, he will make you look at him.
yeah. And
It's
in
not really a
Cancer,
choice sometimes.
and make you feel, gosh, my feelings, and I don't know, since Mars has moved back into Cancer, my feelings have just swung wildly. I find myself crying and then being angry, and then I think that's pretty normal for this transit. So if you felt that way, you are not alone. And another thing just to point out is that while we're sitting here looking at just the beginning of February and the placements of stuff, Mars is retrograde in Cancer, kind of redoing how we nurture ourselves, how we rest, how we nurture everyone else, what family means.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter and Gemini, which is, expanding even though it's retrograde, it will go direct pretty soon in February. So
Yeah.
it's almost not worth it to talk about the retrograde because it's almost over. So
Yeah.
Jupiter and
4 more
Gemini,
days, just 4
yeah,
more days.
4 more days. But and that, intellect, communication become very important. And then we have Mercury and Pluto and the sun in Aquarius. And Aquarius is just the larger view of things and connection to networks and the future and innovation. So I think, and Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018, so it's still there. And I think that just an overall picture, I saw this trend go around, and I'm laughing at when trends take off lately, especially like someone will say something, and here in the South, it's been the snow because it's so rare, and we got snow last week. School was out, things were shut down for a couple of days. We have another snowstorm coming, but we have this weather guy named James Spann here, and he's kind of famous nationwide because he's so good. He will point out a gas station in rural Alabama and be like, if you live by this gas station, take cover. There's a tornado coming. It's crazy.
Yeah.
He's great. He won't give me his birth time. He ignores me, but that's okay. I really need it. But there's all these weather pages that are fear mongering and sharing these huge, like, oh, snow's coming for Alabama next week, and you just don't know. It's almost, it's one of the more impossible things to predict for the South because there's so little data on snow in the South.
Yeah.
And then this other trend I saw was this woman going, don't you just feel disconnected, like you don't care about anything right now? Is anyone else feeling this way? And then I saw a dude do it. And then I've seen everyone's like, yeah, I don't feel connected. And I'm looking at all the Pisces and Aquarius, and I'm like, that's just Pisces and Aquarius. You don't really feel connected.
Yeah.
And you also can't predict the snow. And there's just lots of kind of a lack of being sure about things. And I think starting February, it's still there. So, I mean, if you are feeling like you don't care about stuff and you're disconnected, it's just kind of a mood for right now. I don't think it's going to last. I mean, maybe the Pisces stuff does lend itself to that a little bit, but I think we very quickly shift, and maybe I should go back to the calendar now to look, because we have Venus and Neptune, and I didn't put the North Node there because it's just sitting there with both of them, but it's conjunct the North Node too on February 1st. And then the 3rd,
Sorry, can I back? I just love that you put that butterfly there on the 1st, because it reminds me of that anime meme of this guy who like sees a butterfly, and it's like, to me, that it's an old trend. It's like, first spiritual experience in Westerners. Is this a career?
Actually, what a great meme to look at what house it's in for you, because for me, it's in my 9th house. Is this a whole philosophy? Like maybe not, so that's actually an astute observation.
Is this a new creative project? We should just make one for all of the signs.
Yes, we should. Yeah. Because Venus will retrograde here. So if the dreams you have, hold them as lightly as you would a butterfly, because you may have to go back into your cocoon and rethink it, so.
Was this a bad decision?
Well, Mars square Chiron will bring that up real fast on the 3rd. And Chiron, I don't know that I put it on my calendar a lot, but Chiron is the wounded healer, and it's such a deep myth and a deep archetype with lots to read about it if you feel like it. And I think it's a sensitive area. So Mars retrograde in Cancer, square Chiron in Aries does seem to bring up some wound. And I saw a really, really great quote from, I guess it was some random account, but it was like, a monk once said, imagine being bitten by a snake. And instead of focusing on healing from the poison, you chase the snake to understand why it bit you and prove that you didn't deserve it. So I love that for Mars square Chiron, because it does kind of bring up some places that may be sensitive, may kind of smart on the 3rd, but there will be a 3rd square when Mars goes direct. So don't chase the snake around, just focus on the poison. I mean, maybe don't focus on the poison, try to heal from the poison on the 3rd. But I did want to include that. But I think the 4th gets more of a, I guess, focus when it comes to feeling an energetic shift, as Venus moves into Aries and Jupiter goes direct.
Yay.
You can go your own way. That's what I'm getting from it. How do you
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
about that?
just that Monday the 3rd, I mean, Mars rules Aries, and so it feels like it has some authority of what that Chiron is. And I think Chiron lasts the longest in areas of the other signs.
Yeah.
It's like the wounded healer of like the self, or like those Aries topics really does feel like it is shared for a lot of people. And it's a theme that, I know so many Chiron Aries natives, and just the basic, you know, putting yourself first is really hard. And for people that maybe on paper you would be like, oh well, they're not, they may not have a problem being selfish, but like being able to tend to yourself first, put the oxygen mask on first before your neighbor is incredibly difficult. It can be just like a long process to kind of get to a place where you're seemingly maybe okay with it. So maybe that Mars square, that Chiron, is kind of like, you've waited too long. You really do need to put yourself first. So on the
Mhm.
moon day, moon's exalted in Taurus that day, like just let that be self-care, and like be unconditional with yourself. Don't reward yourself for good behavior. Just give yourself something good as far as tending to that wound, whatever you need to kind of renew. Because we've got some time with that Mars retrograde. It's not going to go direct. For another couple of weeks. It's not going to get out of Cancer until April. I mean, this is a long process. And so when we have those moments, squares are to be overcome. Like, go ahead and get ahead of the game, and like just, treat yourself. Don't feel bad
Mm.
about it. Just, use that moment as a way to don't chase the snake, but just focus on the healing. Good
Yeah.
foods, good spicy pho, whatever. I mean, like, that's what I would love. That's my favorite food is pho. So maybe it's just like that good, nourishing, for the soul, on that Monday the 3rd. After
Yeah.
coming off the first, I mean, the first is like such a deeply heavy day in like the best possible way.
Yeah.
Maybe we can ride that tailwind a little bit into the 3rd, and then the next day with Venus. That's like a final gift Venus has for us before she leaves her sign of exaltation. And then Jupiter goes direct within a couple of hours. I mean, like all of that just feels like you can set yourself up for like an easier month. But the hardest part probably is that Chiron
Yeah,
square
I would
Mars.
agree with you. I mean, and especially in cardinal signs, just like that is it does feel like it can expose some things. And
Mm,
I do think it is kind of nice. I'm a little reticent to say Venus and Aries brings some kind of softness to that square that happens on the 3rd, and Venus moving, and it's kind of like, well, I'm here to help. And you go, okay, well, F all these people, I'm packing my bags and going somewhere
hmm
because I can't take what they're, doing to me. And I say they because Venus is such a relationship planet, but
hmm
it could be money, it could be all kinds of things. That's why I put a little lady with a suitcase, because it feels like
mm,
fed up. It really does.
yeah.
And Jupiter direct is just like, I'm gonna go for it, I'm gonna do. So I do kind of think, though, with Venus moving into Aries, to just keep in mind the retrograde comes and it's slow. Because it's like you leave and go on a trip and then go, oh man, I forgot that I had all this work to do at home, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So don't be, maybe, and I don't like to say don't do this, but it does feel like be aware of being too brazen
Hmm.
because of a wound. Maybe be aware of being too um, self-focused in reaction to, something. Maybe not, because you do want to, be good to yourself, but having that strong reaction could be a thing on the next day where you're just
hmm
like, that's it, I'm doing it my own way, I'm going my own way, I'm doing it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Venus doesn't is not at home in Aries. Venus is like, I gotta care about me.
hmm
Like I usually want to connect people and love and beauty and creativity. And Venus and Aries is just like, do I really have to do this kind of a thing? Um,
Well, and also just looking like, so Venus, the Venus Cazimi is in March, late March, and it's at 2 degrees, 39 minutes Aries. That's the only Venus Cazimi we have all year. And so Venus will be at that 2 degree, 39 minute later on this week of the 7th. So it's like she enters that kind of Cazimi moments are hands down one of my favorites in astrology. And so what is it about that Cazimi on March 22nd that maybe you'll have some sort of an idea of, maybe it'll be, whatever comes from that Venus Neptune North Node tailwind into that, Mars square Chiron, what kind of a letter is she given as she leaves Pisces? And then when she moves into Aries, she has kind of directives. It's martial, it's Aries, it's like go forward. And the and even that first decan of Aries is ruled by Mars, like, so there's like this is real forward motion. And so then on the 6th that she goes in,
it may not be at the
it's
exact
like the
minute,
7th on Friday on Venus's day. It's like to be at that exact 2 degree 39 minute. What is it that maybe is, that's the thing about like capturing these like shadow days, these like these touch points in a chart of is there a really is there something that happens that Friday night that is indicative of something that is maybe revisited with like some grand revelation on March 22nd? How those dates are, since it's the only Venus Cazimi we get, it's an inferior conjunction. And I mean, I'll check my work, but I have it in Astro Gold. Venus conjoin the Sun. The next one is January 6, 2026, and Capricorn. Yep. And beyond that, it's Aries, like, so she will conjoin the Sun at that 2 degree. And then that's the secret that she gets for the year. Yeah. But we'll kind of get that first hint of the secret on the 7th of February this week. And I can't help but think that maybe it's related to this. Venus really does have like her pigments all over the month of February for me. Just how much Venus is influenced by Pisces, and just the beginning of her retrograde, over the Pisces Aries. I'm just really paying attention to these her footprints in the snow.
And after, because the Venus ingress into Aries happens the 4th and Jupiter direct happens the 4th, which is a Tuesday. After that week, there's really not much that happens that's exact. I will say that I guess Mars trine Saturn is exact on the 9th, but that's Sunday after this. It does kind of hold, though. I would say that maybe even if we go back to Wednesday, when does it hit the 18th degree? So yeah, so the week of the 3rd,
that first week.
Yeah, there's the fact that Venus will hit its Cazimi degree, and Mars is holding that trine to Saturn by degree, not by exactly, until the 9th. So that does indicate getting to the heart of something, I think, when Mars trines Saturn. Two malefics working together. I don't know. You can be the judge of that, but I think that's not. I think that's something you can harness, personally speaking, with as far as Saturn wanting to get things done and wanting to invite you to mastery, and Mars retrograde is like, well, maybe I need to approach this differently in order to be able to get things done or do things the right way. And in water signs, such an emotional thing, so let me go ahead and look at that's see, there's nothing here except for the fact that Mars trine Saturn is holding that whole until the 9th when it's exact. And then on the 9th, you get that exact lock-in with Mars and Saturn and Mercury Cazimi. I love that. So not that week will be quiet, I don't think, but I do think it's a slow, gradual build up to this Sunday moment. I'm glad it's happening on a Sunday, and maybe we should look at the Cazimi. because I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's having these undulations of waves that happen, that's kind of, if you've been to the beach enough, you kind of see like there's this rhythm of like all of this loud action happening with a flow, but then the ebb builds the wave. And so that silent or not really highly aspected couple of days, that first week of February, like that's the ebb that's building up towards what we're going to see on the 9th.
Yeah.
I
And I
really like
mean,
that. This Kazemi looks awesome.
it really does. And I like the 20th degree of 2059. It's like very specific here
Mm-hmm.
in the um third decan. So I really feel like the 20th degree is a powerful degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's almost like a turning point degree before it reaches the next sign, to enter that third decan and have a message that's like,
Mm.
hey, this is your message for right now. Pay
Mm-hmm.
attention. In Aquarius, I mean, the bigger picture, and you have Mars and Saturn trine at the same time, and the moon is there with Mars. And it does seem like a very like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
have
like
anything
this.
else to say about the Kazemi?
No, I mean, like, because this is happening in my fourth house, like very, very close to my IC, like I'm looking at it as just like the void, like the lovely void. And, wherever Aquarius is for you, like having that Kazemi there, what sort of mercurial communication and secrets and you know, if you're especially in a Mercury year, I think this will be like a particularly potent Kazemi. And yeah, I don't really have much to add. That I'm just looking forward to it on a personal level, and I just am a huge Kazemi stan.
Mm-hmm. I am too. And I feel like the it's almost something to me that indicates integrity. And
Mm,
I don't know why I'm getting that, but maybe it's the Mars trine Saturn. It's very much I know who I am, what I'm doing.
mm,
Venus has passed the Kazemi degree. So it feels very like integrity to me, or resilience. And I mean, we're going to need resilience after the last few months, after this
yeah.
Mars retrograde. And I think this moment is a moment to have that resilience and to stand in that integrity. Um,
I like Mercury Kazemi just for integrity's sake anyway, because if you imagine, Mercury getting close to the sun just gets burned up and like all the things, all the unnecessary things get burned away. And then when you get past that, combustion phase into the Kazemi moment, it's like everything else has been burned away that's unnecessary. And all that's left is like your naked self in that throne room, vulnerable, absorbing that agape love of the sun. Like that to me, like
mm,
that's like there is no like bullshit here. And it's an
yeah.
Aquarius, which is a fixed Saturn air sign. So it's like no bullshit at all. And I think Kazemi moments can be that moment of integrity of just of editing away all the superfluous adornments that we think identify us as, instead of it just being the mind or the form of communication. But on top of that, being an Aquarius just feels like kind of like no edit at all, of just like exactly an authentic communication between Mercury and the Sun.
It's so beautiful. I mean, I guess the one thing that is pulling on it is Uranus, but
Mm,
this is a closing square with the sun and Uranus,
mm-hmm,
the third quarter, and have it be a Kazemi to me is very
mm,
indicative of. I mean, Uranus has been working on innovating the place that we are comfortable,
yeah.
and we've been through a lot of it. I mean, back in October, November, there was an opposition to Uranus. I mean, if you look at the summer, there was a square with the sun and Uranus, and Mercury's never far behind. Um, so to have the Kazemi be this at this moment of the third quarter square to
Mm-hmm.
Uranus before it moves into Gemini, which it will later. And there's only the conjunction left, the last conjunction of the Sun and Uranus together before it moves into Gemini, I think. I don't know. I think it speaks to, I've done a lot of research and I have to stand in it now. As much as
Mm-hmm.
Uranus indicates change, there is this fortitude here, like I
Yeah,
am
yeah,
going to
yeah,
do this. So, um, yeah, I agree with you.
yeah.
So back to the calendar because I can't remember anything.
Just the full moon.
Just a full moon. Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
true. And I guess that the full moon is also, I mean, it's Uranian, but I think the Kazemi happening right before that
Mm.
message of what is your plan, Stan, what is it?
Yeah.
Because
Well, and
Aquarius is
also
plans.
it's squaring that Uranus still.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
full moon is almost exactly square to it. So let's go
Mm-hmm.
back to the chart. Because
The 12th, yeah.
24, so Uranus is at 2320. It is less than a degree off the exact
Mm-hmm.
square. And Mercury, I mean, has passed the square, but yeah, so I guess the sun's past the exact square to it, but the full moon being at a T square with Uranus is
That's
very
enough.
much, it's very much like I'm going to be loud about what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
I need to have attention drawn to it. Um, and if I'm going to make a change, you have the Kazemi, and obviously all this is, just metaphorical and trying to paint a picture. But the Kazemi's like, here's my plan. I have this future goal, Aquarius, or this is the group I want to belong to based on the values that have changed in my life. And then the
Mm-hmm.
full moon happens in Leo, and it's like, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know, I'm going to be loud, I'm going to have attention drawn to either the changes I'm making or the revolution with everything going on in especially America, but the world. I mean, this does kind of scream revolution to me. I can't help but see that.
Well, sure. I mean, if you look at just the moon as circumstance or the people, and the moon is in the solar temple. So we look at, solar archetypes as being like singular people of power, like royalty. And we have this full moon. The moon is in kind of that it's this tension of opposites. So the moon of the people is in the house of the singular royal power. The sun of the singular royal power that has been through a conjunction with Pluto earlier this year is in the kind of the people's house. It just feel, and then they're kind of plugged in to that electrical grounding rod or anti-grounding rod of Uranus, and the place that the moon exalts, it just feels like an electrified moment of somebody's got to give. It's like the Spider-Man, all three Spider-Men all pointing at each other. It's like somebody's got to give. Like there's going to be some sort of
Yes.
disruption, and fixed signs disrupting fixed sign is against the nature. It's like their responsibility is to sustain and hold, and
Mhm.
to have that illumination of the full moon with that disruption, that unexpected sudden disruption of Uranus. Revolution at what level, but just like a crack in the facade, even that alone
Yeah.
starts to really start to crumble that, ideas of power really start to change in moments like this, is what I see.
Yeah, and Leo being such a kingly sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that it's in Mars's bound.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, there's an extra fire, here. And it's not an eclipse. Eclipses are downfall of the king sometimes that can be
Mm-hmm.
looked at as that. But this full moon in Leo is going to, I think, put either celebrities or um, kingly type figures in the spotlight, probably based on the cracks in the
Yeah.
facade.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing that, and I think the sun is in Aquarius is showing that in particular as we move towards that. But
And it's almost
Mars,
like I wonder about like the Uranus and Taurus as just being like food supply, or bird flu causing an egg shortage, like that's sort of like something really
commerce,
mundane,
yeah,
like something that is like there's a disruption and the access that we have to our creature comforts, like Netflix goes down or something. It's like
yeah,
Like we like run outside with pitchforks and torches because we can't watch our shows. Like something really seemingly mundane that starts the disruption, like the Arab Spring or, you know, Occupy Wall Street. It started kind of innocuously, maybe not so innocuously, but you wouldn't expect that this one little thing would then crack open a deeper wound. Like the whole Luigi thing with United Healthcare. It's like he clearly tapped into something that was a shared frustration. He took it to a violent level, but people weren't surprised. And like the lack of surprise was surprising to a lot of people and not surprising to most. So it's like this one, not that the death of a man is innocuous at all, but it's like this one action cracks open or reveals a wound that has existed for or festered for a long time. And that kind of feels like that kind of moment. I feel like if there is a disruption, it'll be in kind of our mundane physical world. You know, this is early planting season in the northern hemisphere. You know, we're not really looking at supplies yet, but maybe it's related to farming. Maybe it's related to access to seeds. You know, maybe there's some sort of disruption, and you know, Monsanto screws up and like sends everybody like bad seeds that day, and the you know the crops don't rise. You know, and all the farmers that get subsidized anyway, like all fail, and that starts to really disrupt our food supply for animals and all the things, you know, all the cascading things that can happen from one poor decision.
Yeah.
So not that it will be catastrophic. I mean, we can also use our imagination for good.
For sure. And I
Yeah.
mean, it could be even the TikTok thing blowing up, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not good for the American government that all of their citizens are learning Mandarin
Yeah.
and, you know, like getting on this app. And so you look at things like that. And then, I mean, it kind of feels like there could be some far reaching with, I mean, Aquarius being Saturn ruled and things like that. So I do look at this and put it on my calendar as a high energy day. I don't know that it's
Mm.
explosive, but I mean, Uranus is unexpected. And I do feel like it's going to be loud. Right before this, the moon will sextile Jupiter, you know, kind of like emboldening it. And it meets Mars even just before this full moon. So I kind of look at the moon's journey to full. What is it hitting? What is it doing? And it's going to hit Jupiter, it's going to hit Mars, and it's going to be full. So yeah, I would put February 12th on your calendar as, you know, pay attention at least.
Mm.
The fact that Ceres is with the sun, and I don't really I love asteroids. I don't use them in my general forecast very often, but Ceres is related to grain and
Mm-hmm.
food.
Yeah.
And so I mean that's kind of inescapable to me to see it in between the sun and Mercury. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
definitely.
like that you throw the asteroids in there because I don't use asteroids much, but have started to kind of start to fold them in, and they really just add another like mirror to the kaleidoscope to reflect back all the light that's kind of trying to shine through and just makes it more beautiful. So
It really
I like that
does.
you include them.
Yeah, and I honestly I've been doing it personally, but like I've just kind of left them in, and now I'm
Mm.
like, wow, okay, that you know, it adds another layer, like you're saying. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, full moon in. Like I put a megaphone with lightning because it felt like that. It's just
Zzz, zzz,
like
zzz.
protests, and yeah, like we're
Yeah.
not gonna put up with this anymore. And you know, again, Saturn and Pisces being what it is historically for me also kind of makes me pay attention because the sun
Mm.
is in a Saturn ruled sign. So moving on though, Mercury moves into Pisces on the 14th on Valentine's Day.
Woo-hoo.
I know. So you
Where
know,
all the
space
poets
out.
are born.
Yeah, it is space out time, buddy. And especially context of the full moon being right before it, you do kind of get the sense that people want to either escape or don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
That commerce is really Mercury rules commerce and astrology and communication. That's something like that because Pisces is its sign of
Fall
fall
and
and
exile.
exile. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it really is. It is a beautiful place. And when we say that, you know, I have Mercury in detriment, it doesn't really mean that You know, if you have Mercury in Pisces, it's, something like you're dumb, although I've been called dumb before, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that. It means to me just a very large imagination, connection to the muses, connection to inspiration. Um, so, Mercury in Pisces, when you hear fall and exile, I think that's, something to pay attention to, but not something to focus on whenever
Mhm.
you think about it like that, because there is lots to gain from the ether with Mercury and Pisces, lots of um, I know Aquarius is the sign of innovation, but I feel like a lot of that also happens in Pisces. And if things are to happen, with the full moon that, gives us something to fix, I think Mercury in Pisces lends itself to thinking outside of the box.
Yeah. Well, just with the, we superimpose like kind of moral descriptions on fall and
Yeah.
exile that comes from the dignity scheme that is really related to the theme of Mandi, which is a whole other episode, right?
Yeah.
And there's this beauty in like signs finding their places that they're at home and signs finding places that they're most helped by others. So in exaltation is like it can be kind of a spoiled placement because you expect people to just help you out. A sign at home, it's like you just kind of know where everything is. So maybe there's a lack of curiosity. A sign that is out of its home or a sign that is not being helped out is resourceful. It has to work harder. But from that, you can kind of come up with creative solutions. And we have those like just it reflects back on like our life. Some of us just have it easier in areas of life than others. Some of us don't. And so we become creative to like meet that gap. But within that, we create change and we might be exhausted and we might have to hustle, but we come up with like creative ways to answer that need. To me, Mercury in Pisces is beautiful. It's funny. It's tedious sometimes. Talking to somebody with Mercury and Pisces, their language wanders, and it wanders in a way of like just skip to the end, give me the point. But within that wandering, you get stories, and there's that Life of Pi movie where yes, you can describe what happens to that family in a boat in like real cold Aquarian terms of like these are the facts, and they sucked, or you can tell the Mercury and Pisces version of it of like, there's a lion or a tiger and there's a monkey and there's these things. And this is how the story played out. And it seems unbelievable, but you're still kind of sharing the same uh, theme or the narrative of the story, but in ways it is way easier to accept. There's that movie Life is Beautiful, and it's the Italian movie about the Holocaust, and it's like the way that the father who has his son in a concentration camp is like developing this story around his son to protect his son from the awful truth that they were existing in. The story protected him, and to me, that's Mercury Pisces. It's like, yes, maybe it's not the most direct line to get to a factual end, but it's the most lovely you know wandering path to eventually get to the point.
Yeah.
I just my sister has Mercury in Pisces, and I rib her about it all the time because it's just funny too. She ribs herself about it all the time. But my favorite kind of encapsulated Mercury in Pisces moment was she was leaving me a voicemail on my phone, and her voicemails are always very long. They're just very long and lots of information, and they're tangential. And she ended one with said, well, I guess I don't have anything else to say, and hung up after like 5-6 minutes of like not really answering the question that I had asked, but like leaving me all these other nuggets of gold. Like my sister speaks like honey drips of wisdom from her beautiful mouth. And I just love that it's like Pisces just eventually like peters out. I guess I'll just wander off over here now. And yeah, that's not maybe Mercury's desire, because Mercury likes to be quick and fast and factual and little tiny bits of information that it can dissect further and further. Mercury's in Jupiter's temple, where it's like boundarylessness and all the beautiful, Pisces is ruled by the two benefics, so it's just like good. And
Mm.
yes, it can be a little tedious with it, but I don't know. I'm just I have a soft spot in my heart for exiled and detriment planets, because I feel like the words themselves do not do them justice, but they are an example of their own dignity they carry. And yeah, that was my own, like, Mercury and Taurus, just like.
I agree. And I mean, you said it a lot better than me because I have Mercury and Sag. I just said, you're not dumb. Like that's a very Mercury and Sag thing to say.
Yeah,
And there are just beautiful things. I mean, so and I like to talk about that because I think you can listen to a lot of astrologers and kind of get a complex about certain things. And
for
I don't
sure.
think that's
Yeah,
helpful,
yeah,
so I'm glad we went down that road and followed the rainbow to the light bulb because that's exactly what Mercury and Pisces does. And you
mm-hmm.
described it very well. And I would say with this transit too, uh, I think it's good to allow yourself to wander and to imagine and to be creative. And I think that's the best use and meditation is the best use to Mercury and Pisces. So,
Mm-hmm.
and if you find yourself confused, that, you can at least know the transit happening and go, right, Mercury's in Pisces, confusion can be a thing,
Yeah, yeah,
deception can be a thing.
mm-hmm.
So just, it's like about staying on your toes, about being in your intuition, I think. So,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, Mercury and Pisces.
So can we look
And
at that ingress chart of that? Because
yes,
so
we
the moon will
can.
be in Virgo and Libra on either end of that, but like, where's the moon during this
Yeah,
time?
totally. Let me get there. All right. So looks like the moon is in Virgo.
18. Okay.
And this
It's
is at
opposite
6:06 a.m.
Saturn, huh,
Yep,
which it
sure
does
is.
every month, It's
Yes, it
not a
does.
rare aspect.
I think my cat, when you said that, was trying to climb my cubicle. So I was just afraid it was going to crash on me. That was very Moon Saturn opposition.
Hmm.
So yeah, when Mercury ingresses Pisces, to have the moon and its preferred sign to be in,
Yeah, yeah.
it is drawing attention to, I think, something. And I think the fact that Mercury will retrograde back into the sign, not all the way back to the beginning, but it will retrograde in Pisces. So, just something to keep an eye on. I am looking at anything else it might be doing, and I don't really, and I think it's moving quite fast at this moment. I'm not exactly sure. I could look at the speed. I know it will slow down.
So it goes direct at in April at 26 degrees. It retrogrades in Aries at 9. Yeah,
Mm,
Venus and Mercury both retrograde at that. Like, Venus is at 10 degrees Aries, Mercury's at 9 degrees Aries.
mm,
So that first decan of that Mars Aries, but then Mercury goes back to 26. So we have a little bit of time
yeah.
before we get to that.
With Saturn, which,
Yeah.
point of fact, when Mercury ingresses Pisces, the moon will be opposite Saturn. And I love to
Mm,
see things like that, like giving you a little breadcrumbs to
yeah.
follow, because when Mercury retrogrades back and Venus retrogrades back, they will be there with Saturn. So
Mhm.
something to note.
And I think that when it's direct, Jupiter will also be direct too, like really kind of pulling everything forward. This is like the beginning of that flow of the web of the flow of the wave of 2025, of like, because then come April when things go direct, and then Neptune and Saturn go into Aries, and then Uranus into Gemini. It's like all these things really start to compound and have a lot more flow. Um, yeah, just that retrograde is like this, like, kind of cranking back before things turn into that nice little basket there.
Yep, I agree. And I think also this week does seem pretty well, it's a weekend. So I mean, I guess that's kind of nice because, you know, another thing that the fact that it goes into Pisces at 6 a.m. On a Friday, on a Venus day, you know, be easy with yourself that Friday. Let me put it that way, because it is Valentine's Day, which is really magical and beautiful.
Yeah.
And that evening, the moon does, I want to say the moon ingresses Libra because
Then
people
maybe
do.
maybe you hit snooze too many times on that morning.
That's exactly what I'm picking up on, because I know that when like Venus and Pisces, and my dreams have been off the charts. So pay attention to your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the moon enters Libra Saturday, February 15th, which ends up maybe that's when people celebrate Valentine's anyway, because, or Friday night. But I'm glad that by the evening of Valentine's, the moon will be
Mm,
past the opposition to Saturn, and it will be
yeah.
opposite Neptune.
Yeah. That's lovely.
So very magical. And at least I'm hoping so. I have a gig. So, um, okay. There's the weekend of Valentine's, moon in Libra, pretty nice. Venus is in Aries, and Venus rules Libra. So, um, it will oppose Venus, which I don't mind.
Yeah.
I like
They talk to each
Venus,
other.
moon. They
Yeah.
do oppositions. And so you have the moon in Libra all weekend. Um, I really do like that weekend.
Hmm.
I'm not really, I guess I'm not looking forward to Mercury and Pisces that weekend. I think it's going to be nice.
Well, it's nice if you look at all the weekends in February, they're all ruled by a cardinal moon.
Yes, and
Yeah.
maybe the 8th won't be so great, but there is the Mars thing to contend with. But
Yeah.
the I guess the squares, maybe I guess that would happen on Sunday the 16th with the moon in Libra. Um, Square
Yeah.
Mars, but that
Yeah.
Saturday seems to be pretty nice. Okay. So,
Where are we at? The 18th.
yeah, I guess that's it. There's
So
really not
why
much
did you choose
happening.
um
An 8 ball, a
an
magic eight
paintball?
ball. Because that's how it feels to me,
Hmm.
especially on the heels of, I mean, the next few things we have, you have Mercury square Jupiter. There just seems to be a question with the sun in Pisces. There will be eclipses in this sign, so um,
Yeah.
we have a new moon that is not an eclipse before the eclipse, but you have a full moon in Virgo with the sun in Pisces, and there just seems to be like, what is it? The answer is not, you know, yet solid or something that the 8 ball
Hmm.
says. I watched someone cut an 8 ball in half one time and a magic 8 ball and show what it was, and it was like this little bitty thing with blue water in it and a metal pyramid. It was because you just don't know what's inside an 8 ball.
Yeah.
Really a tiny little thing of liquid with a metal, um almost like pyramid dice in it that it
Hmm.
uses. And I kind of feel like deconstructing it is how these eclipses are going to feel, like
Huh.
deconstructing the 8 ball.
Yeah.
It's just giving what is the next thing to me with the sun
Yeah.
moving into Pisces. um we have the nodal shift, the north nodes in Pisces now. It hasn't quite solidified itself yet what those themes are going to be. I think up until this point, you may get glimpses with Venus moving through Pisces. You may get glimpses with Mercury in Pisces, but that doesn't even happen until right before the sun moves into Pisces. So it just seems like this moment of what's the next thing,
Well, I think we'll have a glimpse with that Mercury square Jupiter.
That's when you shake it and you
Yeah,
go,
yeah, yeah.
here's my
That's the
question.
agitation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Um, So yeah, I mean that is the next thing, and that's I have a fish with a text bubble above its head. I don't
Hmm.
know why I chose that, but yeah, I guess Pisces is the fish, and Jupiter and Gemini is like
The texter.
the texter trying to figure something out, and the
Yeah.
fish just wants to swim. The fish don't talk. Well, the
Well,
incredible
and
Mr. Limpet.
with the moon in Sag and the South Node in Virgo, it's like the mutable party of this winter is not over yet.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an opportunity because they're technically in mutual deception. That's what you call
Hmm.
it. Mutual reception, where they're in each other's signs. But I do love mutual deception with this because Jupiter and Gemini really wants the data. It really
Mm.
wants to understand. Mercury and Pisces is like, I'm swimming. I don't know
Hmm.
what you're talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
focused on
Time
that.
is relative.
Yes. And so I think the square, the tension there, because squares are tension, is how do you do both?
Mm. Hmm.
How do you continue to try to get to the heart of something or understand something or get to the truth of something, but also allow your intuition to speak? And one informs the other in this situation is kind of how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Um, but yeah, the incredible Mr. Limpet transit is on the 20th. And
Officially known as, yeah.
I don't even know if people would know what that is anymore. It's such a elder millennial thing to say. Um, After that, I mean, we'll go back to the chart because I think there's really not terribly. See, where's the Mercury square Jupiter? That's the 20th.
I think we'll just swim a little bit for a couple of days after that, you know.
Feels very swimmy. I and especially this being right
Mm,
before Mars goes direct. And that's really the biggest thing that happens next. Now, probably watching around this time the moon and Sag, I didn't really realize that that's kind of T squaring Mercury square Jupiter, although it's after the
yeah,
exact square.
yeah.
So the 21st, is maybe something to pay attention to, kind of tricky. But then you get Mercury trine Mars and Mars direct at almost at the same time, which I love. So let me
Hmm.
go to that Mercury trine Mars because I think it trines Mars while it's still direct. It is. I mean, still retrograde.
Yeah.
So 17-0 is the exact degrees for this. And this
Hmm.
is February 23rd. It's a Sunday. Um, I gotta look up the Sabian symbol for that. Do you have anything to say about Mercury trining Mars right before it goes direct?
Well, I mean, okay, so I'm thinking more about, there's, how do I say it? There's a lot of words that I'm trying to weave together. So there's Antisha between Gemini and Cancer. There's not quite Antisha here between Jupiter and Mars. There will have been as it's gone retrograde, and there will again when it goes forward. Jupiter is moving into Cancer this year, and it's exalted there, right? But then I look at, okay, well, are there these? It feels like rock climbing in a way of like gathering certain, like knowing where certain places are to hold on to in order to keep going forward if you don't utilize them all or not, but knowing these moments where these touch points in a chart are highlighted, even if it's very subtle. Mercury square Jupiter uh, gets my attention, and even I'm just tired of saying that phrase. It kind of just like tunes into a radio station in my head of like there's something there. There's something there that speaks to this Jupiter and Cancer like moment that's going to happen. Right now Mercury is trining Mars, and so like, is it speaking to that? Like, I don't exactly know what it is, but it feels like there's some nugget there to be kind of unraveled or revealed.
Mhm.
And as Mars goes through that retrograde, they'll have that antisha, which is like a secret conjunction. It's like a secret shareness of that light. And I don't know. I don't have any good answers except like I'm chewing on something that feels like it's more related to the Jupiter and Cancer ingress later on this year.
Mm.
So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, especially considering Mars is in Cancer and you have Mercury squaring Jupiter first and then Mercury trining Mars as it goes direct. It's almost
Mhm.
like the thread that's weaving that ingress of Jupiter together
Yeah.
is the Mercury squaring Jupiter. Like, pay attention to this because, and then pay attention to this because both of these things are going to be happening this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Um,
just looking to see. So it looks like Jupiter will get to that 17-degree in August. Um,
mm,
it'll be after the conjunction with Venus. They have that beautiful Venus Jupiter conjunction at 14 Cancer. So it'll be a little slower. It's slower than that. So I'm just looking to see when it gets back to that actual point. And it's like the end of August. So the sun will
is
be
the
in
sun is,
Virgo.
yes,
Yeah.
opposite where it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So in
that to
6 months'
me,
time. Yeah.
that's crazy. Let me read the 17th degree of Cancer
Yeah. Yeah.
Sabian symbol um, from Dane Rudyard. So it's the unfoldment of multi-level potentialities issuing from an original germ, which is the life urge to actualize one's birth potential, the expanding process of self-actualization, which may mean nothing more than ego expansion through conquest, which contrasts with the introspective study of the relationship between the meaning of energies and potentialities. Is so basically
Mm.
growth is what it's
Hmm.
saying.
Yeah.
So I love that the unfoldment of multi-level
Hmm.
potentialities.
That's how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah, through one seed.
Hmm.
It's like a seed that can grow a bunch of different things, and you have options here. That, what's
Well,
your
and then the
potential?
node will be at 18 Pisces, so very, very close,
Wow.
trining
To
it.
trining Jupiter. So
Yeah.
this
Wow.
moment then is really related to late summer,
Hmm.
and like right before fall. So
Yeah.
which is an eclipse cycle anyway, 6 months, so
Hmm.
it'll be on the heels or actually right before the eclipses
Yeah.
again. So you're having right before eclipses Jupiter and Mercury involved,
Hmm.
Mars and Cancer and Mercury involved, and then you have um on the heels of the eclipse the next time.
Yeah. That was some seat of your pants astrology right there. We were like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Rabbit holes all the way
Yeah.
down, turtles all the way down. So yeah, and I think that this date is going to be it's a Sunday. Take it easy. I have a pearl in a shell because I mean, I guess that's what I was tuning into as well. It's like there's
Mm,
something here that is like a treasure or like a seed that can grow something. It's just
mm-hmm.
potentiality. And you don't know if there's a pearl until you open the shell. You have to kind of dig.
Yeah. So I'll conjure up my fully living Pisces and Pisces Mercury sister again because she has this wonderful Valentine that she made, and it was talking about the pearl. It's a tiny grain of sand, that the pearl aggregates around, or the shell aggregates around to create the pearl, and like those seeds of aggregation, around what seeds piece of sand does what pearl aggregate. And it's like these moments of like Mars in Cancer feels like sand when you're at the beach, when you're just trying to go to
Oh
sleep, just like
yeah,
it's like,
totally does.
but it's like around what the pearls that we can grow from these aggravations, or these like moments of like discomfort. It's like from that we can like aggregate a really beautiful pearl. And so it's interesting that you put that in there, because it's like that's what it feels like, of like, yes, there are silver linings to these difficult transits, like a Mars fallen in Cancer. Can we pull out some like beautiful pearls from that, and that when it goes direct, maybe then we'll start to actually see what they could be. Before that, it's just like, what price do I have to pay to keep them going through these things again? And then maybe it's just like the pearls will start to kind of show themselves, after it goes direct.
Yeah, it's making me a little emotional. I can't lie because it does feel very much like sand and
Yeah.
how uncomfortable that feels in your crack, when
Hmm.
you're on the beach. No one
Yeah.
likes that. No one
Yeah.
likes filling up your bathing suit. Now, I live close to the Gulf, so I have a lot of experience with that. And you were
Mhm.
born in Savannah. That beach
Yeah.
stuff, that is probably the worst part about the beautiful beach is that sand can
Yeah.
irritate you so badly. And that's what Mars retrograde has felt like.
Mm.
And I think everyone is looking forward to that nice shower, where you
Hmm.
wash it all off. And I think Mars direct, especially trine Mercury and Pisces, it's like, oh, I got this pearl, and I'm taking this cool shower. And
And it's a good problem to have, because I just left the beach. It's like
yeah.
reminding of like, it's like, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but like look, reflecting back, I just came from the beach. So it's like, instead of the complaint, it's like the nostalgia of that
The
discomfort. you
gratefulness
know?
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've tried to tune in. I'm a Cancer rising, and my health has been absolute crap for the last year. And I
Hmm.
mean, so many different things. It would be hilarious for me to even talk about it all because I won't. But the fact that I have learned so much in this process, and it's
Hmm.
changed my routine in ways that and also made me just quit I mean, this will go up on Christa's YouTube channel because I have not been able to, devote any energy to that. But but I know there's going to be some beautiful pearl that comes out of this.
Yeah.
That's why I got so emotional. Maybe that's why I picked the pearl there, because it is very much feels like it's not for nothing. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
for nothing.
Yeah.
And
Like
anyone
this
who
is what you've been fighting for the whole time,
the
you
whole
know?
time, and you being someone who goes to the beach, especially with children, it is not fun to like bring all your floats down and like
Yeah.
haul your cooler down. And it's, people are hitting you in the head with floats and stuff on
Mm.
the elevator. But it's not for nothing. It's there
Yeah.
for you to have that time with your family, or that relaxation time. And the fact that you're able to be aggravated at that is something to be grateful for, I think,
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is really seat of your pants astrology, isn't it? I love it. I feel like these little emojis are almost divination in themselves, because I don't.
They totally are. Yeah. Well, so when I do like tarot recordings for people, like I'll make the graphic, but it's like the whole process of like doing like a meditation before, pulling the cards, laying them out, photographing them, putting them into Canva, and then like I start to kind of see like I need to put these graphics in there, and I don't really have like a decision why, and sometimes I don't even talk about them, but they feel like they're asking to be there, and it'll like come out in the interpretation of like maybe that's why I put that there. And I'll say that in recording, like, I don't know why I put a shell with pearls there, but it makes sense in this moment. And
Uh-huh.
like just the act of it being divinatory to me is like why astrology is endless, because it's just like it's not a set script of what everything will say, because it's like there's so many nuanced contextual pieces of information that can add beauty to it. So yeah, it's like I like seeing the calendar, when we do these, because we're like, I wonder why that's there. Like, let's discover why, or maybe she can just
Mhm.
explain what her reasons are. But yeah, the emojis as like to me, I was thinking about just the ingress of Uranus and Gemini, and how maybe we should all just stop using vowels and just like type without vowels, just like make it quicker, because we can read it, anyway. You can read without vowels. It seems unnecessary. And
Uh,
like just using pictograms to communicate and memes to communicate, and like using less actual complete sentences, which might be frustrating to, English teachers out there. But we can still communicate that, and communicate it really quickly, even just through the emojis or the pictures themselves. I mean, we see all these sigils. I can see Mercury Pisces conjunct Saturn Pisces. Like I have that language in my head for the 25th, so I can like see that instead of it writing it out. Like Mercury will and Pisces will conjunct
yes.
Saturn and Pisces. Like the information is the same. It's just like hits like really a lot quicker, and that to me feels like what the Uranus and Gemini transit for the that's coming up and will be there for about 8 years,
Yeah,
is going
yeah.
to like start to really like hone in.
Well, and the telepathy tapes, I know that we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about this privately, but I did start listening to it. And I mean, I think that really is
Yeah.
a very Uranus and Gemini thing. And just the fact that, maybe we just don't understand that we don't really need to use words.
Mm.
And I know that a lot of people probably watching this have had experiences like that. I know I have, especially with my partner, where we just know what each other's thinking, saying, or you'll start singing a song that they were thinking about, or that they had
Mm-hmm.
watched a video on, and it's there for us to tap into. And I do think with the North Node of Pisces, and um, I think it's ripe for that kind of thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
even the 25th with Mercury meeting Saturn, and it won't actually on the retrograde meet Saturn again. It stops the degree before it meets
Oh,
Saturn
really?
again and I think that's hilarious. But
Yeah.
Mercury meeting Saturn does very much feel like unlocking something like
Mm.
that. Which is, like a lock in a cloud is what it feels. It's like Super Mario, where you could jump above the clouds, and
Mm-hmm.
figure something out. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And Saturn is obstacles. So it's almost like there may not, you may have to look around for the key for a minute. You may get annoyed at the lock there on that day, but
Mm-hmm.
there is something to unlock um, on the 25th, intuition wise, imagination wise. I mean, it would be a great, great idea to, I think, let your mind wander for a purpose on that date.
Mm.
Um, like for instance, if you have something you really want to accomplish, let your mind wander around that task before you go to it. You know, it just
Mhm.
feels very much like there is something to unlock, and it can be aggravating, but it may not be if you choose to look at it a certain way. I'll go ahead and share the chart for that because I feel like
Yeah, I just like just the archetypes of Mercury and the archetype of Saturn as both being like timekeepers, and like Mercury kind of being that youth and Saturn being the old man. And just the seemingly opposite nature that they have. In Tarot, the card of Virgo is the Hermit, and the Hermit reminds a lot of people of Saturn. They think that it's a Saturn card because it has that vibe to it. It's a old man holding a lantern with illuminated light. He can light his pathway to see forward, and he has a little bit of light, but it's enough to light the path that he's on to just see like a singular amount of information in order to move forward. But Mercury as the psychopomp, the traveler between worlds, and then Saturn is the one that is like furthest away from the luminaries. It has this tension of like magic and the ability to yes, there are limitations, and maybe it's like you can break through limitations of ways of communication. You can break through these boundaries that you think exist in a Saturnine way because Mercury is there. Is like, well, I volunteer as tribute to go between these worlds and create a dialogue. So I think that it's a way really to kind of, yes, I think contemplating and being like acting like that hermit or acting like that philosopher around those things, because it's in Pisces of, what's the problem, but that the opportunity can really be there to unlock something that might have seemingly seemed insurmountable because it's Saturnine. Saturn just seems so big. It's like you can't really chip it away. But Mercury is like the tiny guy that can go in and really unlock things and yeah, crack the magic 8 ball open. Maybe that's a good remedial magic. You find enough
actually,
eight
yeah.
balls at thrift stores, just go to a thrift store, find the 8 ball in the kids section, which is going to be chaos anyway. They're going to be happy that you're going to take something out of it and like crack open an 8 ball, and then you have that magical die of like ask later or definitely yes that you can like roll for the next time Mercury's Kazemi or Mercury is conjunct Saturn. You can like have your own little magical talisman after doing the remediation of breaking it open. But
Oh,
yeah.
that's such a great point. And, I'm noticing something. Mercury and Saturn come together at 20 Pisces, and Mercury and the Sun came together at 20 Aquarius.
Oh yeah.
There's this 20-degree thing kind of happening with Mercury that I really like. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Saturn is the container, and so Mercury being the die that
Mm-hmm.
it very much is good. And I always get the feeling that Mars is um because Mars is still trying to a certain extent, it's a little past the trine, but Mars will come back and trine Saturn again
Mm.
as on its way forward. And I think it'll try Mercury again as well with Mercury's retrograde. And I need to look at that. But I always get the feeling that once Mars goes direct, Mars has got the rope and it's
Oh
pulling
right.
forward. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we've got this. And something to note from the 23rd through the 1st, everything's direct for just 1 week.
Mm.
1 week of directness. So this week is prime time to really tune in and maybe not make plans. I don't want to get too Virgo with it because the South Node is there. I don't think we're supposed to get too Virgo with it, but I mean, it is something like really be intentional. I think is the word I want to use
Mm.
for this week while everything is direct.
Yeah. I looked in it. Mars will trine Saturn again April 4th as
What
it with
about
its direct question.
Mercury?
Um, Mars won't trine Mercury until, is that right?
Because it'll go direct again. So, oh,
2026?
what? Sorry. I was just shocking. Not just the end of 2026.
How does that even work?
I don't know because I was thinking with
I
Mars
feel like
going
we need to
direct.
like pause the recording and figure this out because I was like, that doesn't seem right. So Mars will be in, it's
Right,
just going to
because
dance
Mercury
around.
goes retrograde, right? Hold
It
on.
goes retrograde in the fire signs this year. And so as Mars, Mars will go into Leo, so it'll conjoin Mercury probably.
There it is. Is that not a trine on in April? There it is. Wait a minute.
Mar no, where's Mercury there? Mercury's
Mercury
at Pisces.
2720, 2706. Let me go hour by hour.
Yeah, is that like a bug in Astro Gold? It's like,
It could
wait,
be
for a whole year?
28, 27, 20, 27, 20, 27, 34. Wait, there it is. 27, 22. I'm so confused right now. It
Yeah.
may have something to do because it's direct motion now. Hold on, go back. Mercury 27,
That
22.
doesn't seem right that it would go like an entire like almost 2 years without a trine. You know what I
It
mean?
doesn't. And I'm trying to figure this out because, okay, Mars is at 26 here.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury's at 27. Mercury. Okay, it may be because of the retrograde. Hold on. 2653, 25, 27, 2558. There's it has to do with the speed. That's
Mm,
what it is. I think it's almost like this rubber band pull and it doesn't quite exactly try. And then Mercury's fast again
yeah.
because Mercury's past the degree. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense with Mercury retrograde. It's like Mars doesn't get to the 26th degree where it turns direct
Mm-hmm.
until Mercury starts moving fast again. So it's like chasing the trine and it's not
Yeah.
getting it. So I think that's right. It's got to be.
Well, just looking through, so looking at like the ingress of Mercury in the different signs, like Mercury is like kind of just following Mars all year long. It gets
Yeah.
Mercury will conjoin Mars and Scorpio, I think. Yeah, October
Yep.
20th, it'll conjoin. So then
Mm-hmm.
it'll get ahead. Um, but then, Mercury goes into Sagittarius and
Uh-huh.
Mars is in Scorpio. And then Mercury goes into Capricorn with Mars in Capricorn. And then
Uh-huh.
Mercury goes into Aquarius with Mars still in Capricorn. So it's like they do this dance. It is like they straddle these two signs as they go through. So no bug in Astro Gold. It's just like, seat of your pants astrology. We're like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah, that's it's quite bizarre. Just when you see a dance like that, I
Yeah.
tend to go, let me pay attention because oftentimes I think it trines more than that. Like this was November 2024. It looks like it's just once a year. It didn't even trine Mars in 2021.
Wow.
So this is something that we're discovering. But
Well, I mean, Mercury only goes as far as two signs away from the sun, right?
sun,
So,
yes.
and it's the trine is 120 degrees.
Yep.
So, like they're both going to be fairly close to the sun anyway. But with a Mars retrograde is when it kind of gets far enough away from the sun because Mars, can be retrograde for 8 months, as we all that survived Mars and Gemini retrograde can attest to. So I guess that alone, at being 120 degrees away, they both stay fairly close to each other, but the retrograde just happens to be that it's holding, for a lot longer with this, and they're not going to be in that trine aspect for, another 20
Yeah.
20 months, something like that.
Yeah, and it looks like the sun really only trines Mars once a year, except when you get to, and this is just a way weird piece of information, 2029, it must have to do with a retrograde because it does it
Mm,
twice in 2029.
yeah.
Okay, well, we learn something new every day.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're getting at.
Yep.
Uh, and also Mercury
Thanks,
trine
Mercury.
Mars. That makes the trine to Mars a little more important to me.
Mm,
I think now that I am aware of that, there's so many cycles to track, and when they do
Mm,
show themselves to you, it's probably something to pay attention to, because this has never really shown itself to me in
yeah.
this way before. Um, so yeah, I really that the shell and the pearl and the unlocking does make a
Hmm.
lot of sense now. And then
I
you
feel
have,
like we cracked it open a little bit just right now.
oh, totally, we did. I
Yeah.
mean, because Mercury conjunct Saturn after this on the 20, whoops, not Mars, Saturn. Um, on the 25th at 20 is still kind of trine to Mars, but
Mm.
knowing that Mercury won't trine Mars again, this is a really a moment to lock in. And it's trining it when it goes direct, like
Yeah.
at that moment.
I
So,
think that's what got my attention. So looking at, so Jupiter will trine the North Node at 17 degrees 43 minutes in September.
mm,
Like right before that eclipse that's going to happen with, in Pisces. So yeah, it just feels like that middle, that 17 degree in Cancer just got my attention.
mm.
Maybe it's from that, seemingly kind of not necessarily common, trine from Mercury there.
And a trine as Mars is like, all right, I'm ready to go forward again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, thanks,
I got the
Mercury.
final piece of the puzzle for Mercury, so I can go forward now.
Yes. And then we have the new moon. I mean, we do have the Mercury Saturn conjunction on the 25th
Hmm.
at 20 degrees. And then the new moon at
Woohoo.
9. And this is the nines. We have a group chat, and we also do videos for Ask Astrology. And we again stumbled seat of your pants kind of stuff onto the fact that there's several new moons
Yeah,
at 9 degrees. And in
I
fact, I'm
think
going to go ahead
six.
and
Is it six of
let's
them?
look. One, there's 9. What is that one? I can't see. That's 9. That's 9. This is backwards.
Yeah, this is going back
Okay,
to
so that's
Scorpio.
10. Yeah.
Scorpio, yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6 of them.
Yep.
So for 6 months, there are 6 new moons at 9 degrees of these signs. 9 is related to, I mean, human gestation. It's related
Mm.
to finality, completion, birthing. We're bringing it to fruition. And
Hmm.
it just so happens that the last new moon is an eclipse at 9 degrees in
Hmm.
Aries, and that's March. But this one is at 9 degrees Pisces, and it is squaring, applying to a square with Jupiter.
Yeah.
Not mad about it. Not mad about that, because
Mhm.
Jupiter rules Pisces. Mercury is in Pisces, very close to the North Node, past Saturn. Um, I am not. I think if anything, and on the calendar, I put just these magical seeds growing into flowers, because seed planting time, new moon.
Hmm.
It's like,
Jupiter's direct. Jupiter's picking up speed. Jupiter rules that lunation. Nine is
yeah.
also the card of the hermit, so it kind of brings that
Uh-huh.
up again.
And
Yeah, like
Venus is bound,
hmm,
bound.
bound. Yep.
My brain. All starts to like just all the symbols like go on top of each other. It looks like
Yeah,
alphabet soup.
yeah.
Um,
It's Saturn's decan.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I normally have them both on here. I don't know why I didn't. But I love that it's Venus is bound.
Hmm.
And appropriate that it's Saturn's decan with the sun approaching Saturn. But the new moon square Jupiter, I'm just not terribly. I think it's a perfect situation for a Pisces new moon, honestly, because Pisces, no boundaries, no real direction in general. But Jupiter and Gemini is like, hey, I got some info though.
Hmm.
Like there's some information. Just plant the seed. You'll
Yeah.
see it when it grows, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's a square. So the squares are the nature of Mars. There's something to be overcome. Again, we talked about good problems to have, like a square to Jupiter feels like a good problem to have. And maybe the good problem to have is what spawns the or gives you the um it's the grit around which that new pearl aggregates sort of thing. It's like the impetus to start something new, because you're like, I'm tired of having the same problem. Like, I have a newly refreshed Jupiter in Gemini that's given me a really good idea. Jupiter Gemini feels like a good idea. And it's squaring it. So it's like there's a little bit of like, what do I have to overcome to kind of get through this? Like, I know that it's worth it now. Like, I really want it. You know, if there's a
Yeah.
boundary is put up or someone told me no, and now that makes me want it even more. So I love this new moon here. It's co-present with Saturn, but it's not really that close.
Mm-mm.
And so it doesn't feel like Saturn's going to be too much of a Eeyore or Debbie Downer in the situation of this new moon.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of it.
I agree. I think Saturn's the Eeyore at the Virgo eclipse, but here it's like, especially it being the ninth degree and it being this is the new moon just before the eclipse season starts. And really,
Yeah.
when you're talking about this eclipse season, just as a preview, because we're really at the end of the month, my daughter's birthday is leap day. So this is really kind of her birthday time. And I always
Mm-hmm.
look at February, the end of the month is the 28th. It's like we're here, we're at the end of the month. It's quick. It's the new
Yeah.
moon, end of the month. And then
And it
it's,
is the last lunation before the eclipses, right? I mean, because the
yep,
next lunation we have is
yep,
the first,
March 14th.
yes, the first Pisces Virgo eclipse.
Yes. And so we're being introduced. And so when it's a switcheroo kind of a thing, so the nodes
Mm-hmm.
just change. The nodes, if you are not familiar, are these little horseshoe shaped things, the points in the sky that the shadow falls on either the sun or the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this situation though that it's a switcheroo eclipse moment because you have the Virgo it's introducing, and then the
Mm-hmm.
next eclipse is Aries. It's the
Oh, yeah.
final
Yeah.
Aries one. So this is like the story switch here,
Yeah.
this eclipse. And I love the story switch eclipses because especially with Mercury about to go back into Pisces at that second eclipse, and maybe we should do an eclipse. I guess March will be our eclipse special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eclipse special March. So I mean, this new moon is, even though it's not an eclipse, is kind of a part of the eclipse
For
story.
sure.
I think it's introducing us like, hey, we're about to have this happen. And the first eclipse being in Virgo, it's very much a letting go of that perfectionist need for things to be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that the new moon in Pisces, that's not an eclipse, is maybe it's giving us, especially with the square to Jupiter, that ability to say, oh yeah, this thing I've imagined is what I want, and
Yeah.
then the eclipse comes around. You have to kind of let go of that, either what your routine or whatever you've held on to with Virgo. So this new moon introduces us to the thing that makes us dream, that makes us
Mm.
have a more of an ability to let go of the Virgo and South Node stuff. Not that you let go of it for good, but changing it up.
Yeah. Put it down for a while, even. I mean, I
Mhm.
like that Mercury's co-present with this one and the next one because Mercury was co-present with the Aries eclipse at 19 last year. It was at 24 degrees retrograde in Aries, and then this one will be what, like 0 degrees retrograde in Aries. But
Mhm.
that it's present here, it's direct, and it's pretty close to that North Node. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I do. I think this one is pretty nice. And this one is, I mean, I think that's why I have the garden here. It's like it
Mm.
just, you might not know exactly what's going to grow out of it, but it is a really nice way to end February, because February, I mean, I think maybe the height of it and the harder parts of it are going to be Mars square Chiron and
Mm.
the full moon square Uranus.
Uranus, yeah.
I'm not, I've tuned into this since I looked at the Mars retrograde cycle. I'm not concerned about Mars direct, even though those direct moments and retrograde moments do tend to
Mm.
be pretty intense.
Hmm.
It does not feel intense to me with the direct. It felt pretty intense with the retro in
Hmm.
the station retro in Leo. But the Mars direct is like, it's almost like we get a kind of a helping hand for that. But to me, Mars still in the thick of the retrograde square Chiron
Yeah. It's
is
not happy. Like it's probably happy to go direct, of like,
mm-hmm,
let's, okay, no regrets, coyote, let's just go forward. But in the middle of it, it's even like we kind of like referred back to the 8th with that moon in Cancer, with Mars co-present. I feel like we feel those more this cycle around than maybe when it goes direct. I mean, maybe not. We'll check in again in February. And one thing that we've never done before is do a retrospective of like, how did that actually happen for us? And maybe we can do that in March. So we'll do our eclipse special, and then we'll do a retrospective of, we said this would happen, and this is what happened to us individually. I think that people might like to hear that, because we talk about it just in our own, in our own personal lives, but it's just so that we're not just like telling you what's going to happen to you. Like, we experience this as well. In ways that, the spectrum of hilarity and just trauma exists for us as well. So
yeah, and it helps to have the language, like you said, to at least it's like putting in a name to it sometimes not sometimes, it's always helpful for me. So, and we're recording this today on the Sun Mars opposition. So happy Fed Up Day.
Wait,
Christa.
what?
Happy Fed Up Day. That's what I'm calling today. The middle of the month. This is the turning point. I think, especially us looking forward at February, even though we're still 15 days away from February ourselves. I think it really does help to put it in perspective when we look back and go, oh, wow, that really did, come out that way, or that was shittier than I thought it would be. Because a lot of times I will think something seems like it's going to be really great, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't consider this and this and this in my chart or whatever. So take everything we say, I think, with a grain of salt, and look at your own chart and where it's at. Because if you, Mercury square Jupiter, we're like, hey, this is, might be not too bad. It might kind of help us tune in. But if you have Mars and Virgo, personally, it may not be as magical for you. So you're going to need to do that in order to really life hack it, and go ahead.
I mean, I'm looking at, you put Venus retrograde in Aries on the 1st.
I had to.
I had a client yesterday, he's a Libra rising, and I was like, oh yeah, like their own personal circumstances. And I was like, well, you should just look ahead at that Venus retrograde, because you may or may not want that person to come back, but they might at that point. And just looking at retrogrades, like a real brief, I was just remembering. So the Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius last year, which was the time that Mercury spent the longest in any sign, was in Sagittarius. On the day it went retrograde, my battery died in my car. And it was a day that I was delivering one of the first gifts of fundraising that I did to give gifts to children that were kind of victims of just the circumstances of Hurricane Helene. So Sagittarius is my second house. My second house is ruled by a Jupiter that's in detriment. And so I was like using my resources to get other people to help out. It's like that collective, I don't have it on my own, so I'm going to ask for help, which is kind of an exile planet. And one of my skills is just to like bother people enough to like help other people out. Like I don't mind asking for help, especially if it's for other people. But the classic Mercury retrograde is my car broke down because my battery died. But I was doing it with this like Sagittarian, like, white knight coming in with gifts sort of a thing. It happened when it stationed direct. 3 weeks later, same thing happened. I delivered the final gifts to kids because it took me weeks to because I was bringing them to their homes. The final gifts to a family that had girls, and then they happened to have neighbors, and I just gave all the gifts away. I went and parked, and my battery died, and I had to get jumped again. So it was like this bookend of the classic Mercury retrograde, your car breaks down, but I was doing it it was couching kind of good, benevolent effort that I didn't do on my own. I did from collective effort because my Jupiter's in the 11th house of like networks and other people. And so it's just like ways that it can express itself. I would not have been able to predict that. I would have not wanted to predict that my car broke down twice in 3 weeks. but I was able to get help immediately. And I was doing it with this kind of classic, Mercury retrograde in my second house that is informed by the 11th house of other people. You know what I mean? Like it was just, and the Jupiter was in Gemini, which is my eighth house, which is other people's resources. I mean, it all kind of like wove together in such a beautiful way. Yes, there was some difficulty, worked really hard to do it. It was hard to like coordinate it all, but it got done. And it's like that can be a retrograde story. If I look at Venus retrograde in Aries, that itself, it's like I can come up with like, oh boy, like that girl's going to come back, or maybe not. It can also reveal itself in like, okay, well, what house is Aries for you? Where is Venus? What are the rulers of the house that Venus is in for you? Like all the things that kind of weave like these particular stories. Retrogrades are kind of times where they slow down. And sometimes that slowing down is injurious, like with Mars slowing down, it can be injurious to Cancer risings, but it can like reveal, it gives us time to kind of catch up to the story in a way where we can write the story, and like retrograde times just feel like moments we're able to kind of have the bandwidth to understand what the story is. So I know we're not going into April or March, but I'm glad that you put that in there because I've been like looking at the Aries retrograde and a Venus retrograde in Aries and Pisces and kind of looking forward to it just because I feel like it'll be lots of astrology good chances.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the fact that Mars was retrograde in Cancer for so long, and then now we have a Venus retrograde in Mars sign.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, maybe this is more like picking up the pieces after the Mars retrograde and remembering who we are and what we stand for.
Yeah.
And what we want to do. And I also think it's rude that they just delete February 29th. So I had to put March 1st in there because that's really February 29th. So. So I had to put it in there. It feels rude to not warn people about March 1st, because those stations are the like you said, your Mercury stations for the times your car broke down. So
yeah,
it's something to note as you go into February that the end of February, beginning of March is when Venus retrograde. So you have from Sunday through Friday of everything direct. So, or maybe Monday through Friday is the better way to look at it. So use that week wisely, and think about Venus retrograde because there will be some themes that pop up.
Yep.
Well, that was
no pressure. No pressure at all.
None. No pressure. I really don't mind. Especially now we're recording this at the Mars Sun opposition, which is really for me usually the turning point in the retrograde story. So
it's like that full moon moment almost of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it totally is. And we had a full moon with Mars and in January. I mean, this is kind of a retrospective, I guess, even though we're still in it. But looking at February, I feel a lot better about February than I did January, even though there are some big things happening. I think February gives us a chance to kind of, I don't know, reconsider, and it's not a Mercury retrograde, but it still feels like a time to get our bearings, look at the playing field almost,
Yeah.
Especially with the trines to Saturn and the Mercury conjunction to Saturn and the trine of Mars and Mercury and the things working together look to me like it's a time when we get to almost collect ourselves before the eclipses,
What do you see as far as like the rising signs that might feel this the loudest
in February?
In February.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Pisces risings, Virgo risings, all the mutable risings, Gemini and Sag risings are going to have their own pieces of the puzzle because you have Mercury in Pisces, you have Jupiter in Gemini, you have Saturn in Pisces. There's a lot there. And then
the nodes really,
which are going to make it crazy. But I do think to a certain extent, you get cardinal risings with the Mars station. But look, let's not leave out fixed signs. We have a full moon in fixed signs and a Cazimi in a fixed sign. So
yeah, that's true.
I want to say that I strongest, if you want to talk about the strongest, I think is probably the fixed signs with the full moon square Uranus. I'm thinking
Yeah.
that's going to be a real point of change and maybe point of standing up and a point of I can't take this anymore for fixed
Mm.
signs. It's all everyone's going to have their own challenges, but I do
Yeah.
think Cancer risings are uniquely also have been uniquely pinpointed during this. What
Yeah, I
about
mean,
you?
it's like that Oprah, like you get an aspect and you get aspect and you get aspect. I do think that, like it makes sense. Like everyone's gonna have this affecting. To me, it's the water risings,
Mm,
because it's hitting that first house in so many ways. But when you think about, okay, well, I have a series of news to give certain people, and what are the ones that I dread to give any news to? It's the fixed signs. And
mhm,
so that, I think you're spot on, of like that full moon squaring Uranus. It's kind of like we're just illuminating this dysfunction, and
mhm,
Uranus is here to change things up. And I know that you don't like to hear that, but it's going to happen. And it's sudden and it's unpredictable, which is also things that maybe you don't find that you'd like to happen. And the cardinal, or the four angles, it's yourself, your relationships, your how you're seen and how you see yourself, like your home, your career, your relationships, those anchors in a chart for fixed signs don't really want the disruption, because they work
mhm,
really hard to keep that from happening. So I think that might be allowed just in the middle of the month. But it's the water risings feel like they get it hit. But as a modality, I still think it's the
mhm,
mutables. They have the nodes there, but with the greater malefic and the greater benefic of Saturn and Jupiter and those mutable signs,
mm.
there it's like every time the moon hits it, it's going to create a T-square. So
I know.
yeah.
And yeah, that's coming. And by the way, when Krista says this about the fixed signs, both of us have exactly opposite sun
Hmm.
fixed suns.
Yeah.
And we're going to be hit with this. It happens in my second house of finances, the full moon does, with Uranus
Hmm.
square in my 11th house. And just as a way to use it, like, I have not had a chance to build my network this year like I had been, and I had been doing it a
Hmm.
lot. And I think for me, I'm forced to. I really, Matilda needs braces. My oldest or youngest kid needs braces. And I think about that kind of stuff and I try to tune into what might change. And I would like to make the change myself based on the
Mm-hmm.
pressure rather than let it be.
Happen
I
to
mean,
you. Yeah.
yeah. And then maybe the unpredictable part will be that it goes well, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll see. And for you, it's in your fourth house. Is it going to be in your
Leo's 10th,
10th
Aquarius,
house?
of
So
course. Yeah.
yeah, it's very similar in that way. I think me and
Yeah.
you are having that similar, like there's pressure somewhere. And you know, you usually know what to do to fix
Yeah.
it.
Well, and Uranus has been hovering over my Sun and Mercury for a very long time.
Hmm.
The Uranus Jupiter conjunction was exact on my Mercury last year.
Hmm.
And so, the unpredictability of, that those one-on-one relationships, those partnerships, that seventh house, that really loud seventh house of mine, that unpredictability, it's like, I'm not going to say I'm used to it, but I think astrology and also just a intermittent meditation practice is, if I was disciplined about it, it would be way better. But to be able to ride that middle path, of those unpredictable moments of like not over responding or shutting down, but like riding that and understanding that, like, this land of fortune that we live in, this land of matter and this land of this lunar realm that we inhabit, that, you know, everything is temporary. And
Hmm.
to kind of ride that unpredictability is kind of what I've been able to learn from Uranus and Taurus. I natally have Uranus and Scorpio opposing my sun. So it's like I when things are surprising, they can be shocking, but they're not necessarily like they're unpredictable, but not like too out of the
Hmm.
box. I'm just kind of, I guess, used to it being disrupted.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I think that whatever the case may be, if you do experience things and you do have examples, please share them in the comments because we
Mhm.
like to know. I mean, we sit here and have all these examples, but it really helps to have actual data from people. What did you go through? What was
Yeah.
your experience with it? I have one client who will make sure to tell me when I'm wrong, like,
Yeah.
like,
Which is
well,
great.
it wasn't like that. And I'm like, that is great. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, sorry. I'm
Hmm.
just kidding. But I do think that a lot of times, even if we say this is a good moment, sometimes that can be a good moment that's sown and you don't see it exactly then,
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, please tell us, even if we're wrong, and definitely tell us if we're right in the
Definitely.
comments.
Yeah, we love that.
Definitely.
We feed off that. I also think it would be a fun episode to do sometime this year of, if you have like an astrology good moment to share it, if you want to share it anonymously. And so, for some reason, Mandy is now tuning in.
That didn't happen the whole time.
Yeah, it did not happen the whole time. But if you have like an astrology good moment that you want to share, that if you know enough about astrology or you have a moment that's like really loud, you can email us. We'll put our emails in the description. And, we can kind of talk about your story or talk about your chart, just as like an astrology good episode of like, these are ways that these transits have laid out for people. So even if it was last year, I think I feel like it would be helpful for people to kind of see other stories and how they happen. And also, it's just like it's like a fun news day to like talk about the astrology good moments, even the harder ones, to remind us of like there's the phrase as above, so below. They're just mirrors of like not causing them to happen, but reflecting that they are happening. And so to be seen, like that's how Mandy and I both read charts, is like sometimes it's just good to be seen by the astrology, be
Mhm.
seen by the astrologer to like give you a perspective on a situation that maybe you beat yourself up on. But we see it as like, well, I see it this way. Like, is that helpful at all? Just to be seen, it's like it's the better version of Schrodinger's cat, so that we actually do exist. And yeah, we'll maybe I just like laid that on Mandy that we're going to do that, but we'll come to a
I
more
love it.
formed idea later of like doing an astrology good episode, because I think that'd be fun, and maybe you can capture it in February with some of these loud transits. Let us know how the full moon in Leo was for you, especially the fixed signs. You can send it in anonymously if you prefer. um, Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun, we will keep your secrets to the grave.
Oh,
So
yes. Man, I
we
bury him in the
love
backyard.
we love to keep secrets. We love that no one else knows but us.
It's my favorite thing.
So yeah.
Oh, well, I am Mandy Ray with Ecstatic Astrology, ecstaticastrology.com, and open for bookings. So please holler at me.
I am Christa, Practical Astros. You can find me all the Practical Astros socials, and I'll put all of our contact information and availability down in the show notes. Thanks again, Mandy. This is our 12th. No, it's not, because I missed for the hurricane. This
Oh,
would have been our 12th episode because we started in March last year.
but a
This
full
is
year.
our full year. Yeah. So
Yeah.
high five. Way to go.
Yes. What is it? Does it do it? Sometimes it'll do it. It's not doing it for me, but yeah, thumbs up.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks, y'all.